take this from you. I think
you
that's
should.
Like our little
I think
tradition.
you should do it. I think you should do it. Let's try it again, and you take it. Yeah.
Thinking Basketball Podcast. I am Ben Taylor. I'm also...
You're Kyle. Yeah.
Is it Cody Hudek? Is that or Howdek?
No, it's actually neither of those. You got to pretend
Oh,
that isn't the
shoot.
name. It's Hodek.
Hudek.
Yeah.
That was the third option I didn't say because
Yeah.
you cut me off. Just kidding. I am Kyle Mann. We have a tradition where I do the intro to Ben's show, and I take it over, and I interview him, and I'm going to subsequently interview Cody as well. So I hope you guys are ready for an hour, maybe 2-3 hours. We'll see how long this goes.
Goodness.
Of pain. This is going to be like getting a full back tattoo in the tender spots. That's what this conversation is going to be like. I'm sorry, Ben. Take your show over.
Yeah,
I'll step aside.
Kyle Mann is here. It's been so long since he's been here. He's having an identity crisis. He thought it was me for a second. Kyle, when was the last time you were on the show? Was it about 3 years ago?
It wasn't that long ago.
2 years ago.
Yeah, I was. I think I came on last season at one point.
No.
You usually have to goad and bully me and harass.
I do. I do. It wasn't last season, and here's why I'm asking, and here's why I remember. Because I believe the last time you were here, we had a conversation when Chet Holmgren was entering the NBA draft about whether he could be some sort of new archetype. We were talking about big ball handlers, and we were talking about paradigm shifts, and you had this great rant about Draymond Green and Steph Curry being connective tissue and this double paradigm shift that overlapped and created this dynasty, and there was a little Chet conversation, and that has just been brewing in my head for like years, to the point where even over the summer, Cody and I redrafted the last few drafts in one of our episodes, and we forgot about Chet. And when we got to Chet, I was like, what if we just see him in like one game and we're just like, oh my God, Chet Holmgren.
What if indeed?
Yes.
What if
and
indeed?
now you have these rookie rankings on the Ringer. I want to talk about your true love in life, your true passion, your bailiwick, the NBA rookies, and the transition phase between college prospect and international draft. And now they're in the league. And where should we start?
Kyle,
what is Chet?
Before we get there, I know, Kyle, that you love your rookies, you love your college players. That's so outside my purview here. I don't know anything about these. Ben says we forgot to draft him. I wasn't drafting anyone new to the league because I hadn't seen them all. But if you were to describe your NBA love language, like when you see a guy developing in the league, like a rookie or something, what gets you going a little bit? What gets you a little feathery in the tummy? You know what I'm saying? Like, what are the kinds of things that when you're ranking these rookies, you're like, yep, this is the guy that's going to be ranked here because of X skill set?
Oh boy. I have a few things. I think if you listen or consume things that I produce, I think there are little patterns that can either be nauseating and annoying, or they can be exciting, depending on, because I get excited about them. So if you've heard this before, I apologize, but Ben and I have talked about this, I know, separately. Like, I'm big on guys that the ball flows through them. So I'm really big on finding metrics that, like, to discover players. I'm big on trying to use metrics that expose their decision-making, processing time. We always say processing. I try to de-jargon my life as much as I can, but processing is one of those you can just watch people's eyes glaze over. You're like, what is this guy talking about? No, I mean, I like the guys that, like, the ball moves through them. So I'm really big on guys that can do the interchangeable thing. They are smart enough to spot up, or, like, when it's necessary, to make the right cut when it's necessary, not to linger, not to overpound the ball. So I like that a whole lot. Obviously, Jokic is the apex zenith version of that, and the cross section of being dominant in the ISO, and he can toggle. That's that's why he's the apex of it, is he can toggle between, I'm gonna bust your ass under the basket. I love Ben's Zebo cross with Larry Bird. Was that your thing? Like, was it Bird, or it was
Dirk, Bird, and Zebo? I think it was in it was in one of my original Jokic videos. I gave him a hybrid strain of 3 parts.
Yeah. Yeah, I just love guys who are not, like, long touch dependent. And then, let's see, other than that, I mean, I really love live dribble skill sets. Those things get me really excited. And then I really enjoy kind of like off ball, here's the word again, processing. Like, I really like defensively, I'd say those are the ones. Is there any kind of Am I missing one? Is there one that you've observed me getting excited about? Either one of you, or have you paid enough attention to even answer that?
Touch around the basket gets you really going. Yeah, that revs the engines quite a bit.
Here's an example. Okay, so I thought of this and then forgot it in the midst of my long-winded answer. An example of kind of my basketball value set, I think, is reflected in whose gear I buy for my 3-year-old son. So I basically equip him with passers and shooters, mainly passers, just because I want him to have that deferring kind of core, foundation in his life. So he has like a Steph jersey, a Jokic jersey, a LaMelo jersey. He's probably not going to be a defender if he's anything like his dad. So we're just we're really trying to get an unselfish kind of thing brewed into him.
So with LaMelo being in there, it's not even necessarily like, I don't want to say effectiveness over flash, but LaMelo's the kind of guy that, like, I don't think there's any arguing that he's one of the best passers in the league, but I do think there's an element of being like, you know what, if you took a little bit, like just a dash of that mustard off that sandwich, like maybe you'd be a little bit more effective. So to you, the flash doesn't necessarily take away from it. You don't need somebody that's necessarily like hardcore efficiency guy. I'm going out there to do my job. None of this highlight BS, right? Like you don't mind if somebody's going out there being like, I'm going to put a little hot sauce on this dish.
I think this is an interesting thing. Like, I mean, I'd be curious to bounce off you two basketball, geniuses. And that sounded sarcastic, but I didn't mean it to.
It was sarcastic. It's noted in the record. That was sarcastic. Continue,
geniuses.
Kyle. Yes.
That's a bunch of horse shit. No, I mean, how have you guys felt about like the conversation about LaMelo in the past? Because I find myself kind of going crazy. I feel like his visibility in the past year has made people maybe pick at him a little bit, and he's on a bad team. I mean, have you guys dipped it all on him, or where does LaMelo watch stand with you? Because I mean, he does have a lot of flair and creativity, but to me, it's in the same category as what Jokic does. Like I mean, he has some sort of like natural aesthetic sort of bend in his game where it's like, okay, he's choosing to kind of make that look good. But I never feel like he's just like white chocolate out there. Like, we're playing around in an like the bridge between like and one aesthetic and NBA aesthetic. I don't feel like it's too overbearing with LaMelo. What do you all think?
Yeah, I think at this point I could almost be described as a LaMelo truther. Like I think there's something there. I don't know what it is, but I don't really see an excessive amount of flash in his game. I just think he's got crazy ball skills, crazy vision. He's constantly thinking about how to manipulate the defense. He's really quick, and he's got like this incredible shooting touch, to go back to, one of your fetishes, Kyle, like the floater from 17 feet. I want to see if he can get a floater from 3 as part of the regular repertoire. That's what I want to see, because he's pretty comfortable shooting a legitimate floater from outside the free throw line. He did it the other night in the game I was watching. And this season, he's added range to his 3. And I think that's functional as well. Like we go around the league and we say, oh my God, Trae Young's got this 29-foot 3-point pull-up so he can stretch the defense. And Dame Lillard shoots from far away. So even though his percentage isn't great, he's adding this extra dimension. LaMelo is still like 38, 39%, I think, to start the season. And it's been a very clear thing. Like he's pulling up from 5 feet behind the line to try to pull in more range, try to make the defense commit and have to come out farther and then use that space to attack. So, yeah, I think I'm interested to hear what you guys think, because I feel like at this point a lot of people are low on him, relatively speaking, and I think he's already good. And the question is, like, is he just in a bad situation? Have we not seen a large enough sample because he missed so much time last season? Like, where is this going? Because he's still really young, too.
I think talking about the and one influence, like the flair that he has, Ben, I almost see some of those pull-up threes. Sometimes I'm like, you know what? That's always going to be there. Like any possession LaMelo wants to pull up from 5 feet behind the line, that possession's going to be there. So sometimes he takes it. And while you're right, it might bend the defense in a specific way. It still makes me think like, was this the opportunity to really take that? Do we really need to dip into that bag right now? But in terms of the passing, I mean, I see shades of the Magic Johnson type of passing package. Like, I don't remember who they were playing the other night, but he had one in transition where it was like he picked up his dribble maybe like 5 feet in front of the half court, right? And he's like kind of swinging it like he's going to do a bowling ball pass to his left, but then he kind of last second decides to throw it like a lob to his right, and it completely threw off the two defenders that were down there. And I'm like, that was the most Magic pass I've seen from a single player since Magic Johnson himself. So like the passing, the audacity that he has with this passing, like he's number one in audacity when it comes to passing in the league. I mean, obviously Jokic is always right there in the conversation, but sometimes LaMelo just throws these one-handed, offhand passes where I'm like, dear God, no one else is going to try that. But Ben, the scoring aspect to me is where I'm still like, I don't know. I think let's maybe have a bit more discernment when you're going to be taking some of these longer types of shots.
Is it a mid-range thing? Is it a go ahead, Kyle.
I had a bad glare on my glasses. I had to fix it. Sorry. My sister roasts me every time she sees a video. She's like, "What? Why did you skimp on that?" I was well. I'm glad you talked about that. But Ben, go ahead. He threw to you. I don't want to get in the way. Go ahead.
No. I'm just wondering if this is, we're talking about pull-up threes, but his mid-range shot is, the numbers in the last couple of years have not been great. Is it a shot selection thing? It's early in the show, Kyle. I don't want to we have a tradition now this season where Cody gets all warmed up and he gets all spicy and he goes on a rant about Anthony Edwards' shot selection. So we're like teetering on the edge right now.
Has it been positive? Before we get to that, are you positive about it or do you get frustrated with it?
I get frustrated with it. To me, thanks, Ben, for setting this up so early in the show. But for those of you that have missed the last couple of episodes, to me, the key part of why I don't necessarily see the Timberwolves as like an inner circle title contender at the moment is that Anthony Edwards sometimes dips into like 2006 hero ball, where he's like, 18-foot jumper time. And I think a lot of those times I'm like, you know what? I would prefer you to pick something else. I don't quite see it that dramatically in LaMelo, but I see twinges of it sometimes. Twinges of it. And like you said, it's those long three-pointers where he's 3 or 4 feet behind the line where, he can pull from there. He's shooting, 39% from three. It's on a little bit less volume than last season. But still, there are a couple times I feel like a game where I'm like, did we need to fire that one off at that moment? And maybe that's really nitpicking here because I'm pretty high on LaMelo myself, but that is the one thing that I'm like, that's the kind of flair that I would like to see cut out just a little bit more.
It's interesting you bring up the thing about Ant because Ant is such a touchy subject we've talked about this before, but I mean, like self-creator scorer types, they draw the biggest, they radicalize people in a way that is different than any other player. Like you have to really watch how you talk about them because if you just don't want to hear the nonsense on social media, in my mind will do the calculus. I'll be like, okay, I'll say this in like a 4 degrees cooler way just so I don't I'll say the same thing, but I'll pull out the soften it with the thesaurus as much as I can. But Ant, this has always been the thing with Ant, and I think it's almost like the Isildur in Mount Doom thing, where he's just like he's looking at he always has the option, this is a function of his body, is that like he can always create that shot whenever he wants to. I think Wemby's going through a little bit of this. We can talk about this. I think he's settling for different reasons. But when you have access to that pull-up jumper like that, I think that people will be like, no, Anthony, don't shoot that. And it's the Isildur look over the shoulder and he goes, no. He's like, he has to. It's the ring. He's like, I have to. It's like, I have to put this shot up. He's gotten better about it. I sometimes get surprised when people go wild with like the crunch time decision-making praise because I'm like, it kind of looks the same to me, but I don't want to make it sound like I don't think he's improved because I do think that he has. I had a question about, decision-making discernment. I think I said on this show one time, did I say that or was that on, I think I just got feedback from you, Ben, or maybe I'm like conflating those two things. Discernment is big, I think, in development. I talked about this in the rookie rankings. I think Scoot is a huge one for this. We can get to that. I'm curious about the floater three. Shooting evolution is really fascinating to me. When do you think it's appropriate to take one? Because I think it's amazing. I practice them sometimes jokingly with my pickup group on Thursday nights, and everybody laughs. I'm at keep laughing because they're going in. When do you take one? Do you turn the corner on a ball screen and shoot one really quick when they're not ready for it? Do you take one in transition? When do you take a transition three from 29 or 23 feet? When do you do that?
Wait, first of all, when you say the floater three, do you literally mean like the Luka Doncic game-winning leaner one-handed floater, or are you just talking like a pull-up type of three?
I'm talking, I shoot it like it's the only way I can shoot it in one motion because I'm a solid Larry Bird, like two motion. Like maybe not that exact. I'm not like Trebuchet, but I have a distinct two motions in my shot. I've posted it. You can go find it on Instagram because I had to like shut up the haters and be like, hey, I am a dorky white guy, but I can shoot the ball. So I was shooting it like sort of like if you watch Hoosiers, the way that they would shoot jumpers, it's like you just kind of walk into it with your knee up. Like that's how I shoot a floater three. Like I don't know, kind of a teardrop-y kind of a thing, right?
Okay.
Like
one leg,
yeah,
moving and maybe like a little push, more of a push.
But when do you take those? We all love that idea. Like, I didn't want Wemby. I thought it was adorable that Wemby was shooting those with Mets 92, but I was like, he's going to land on somebody. Like, I thought it was a stupid thing. This has no function in the NBA. I don't know. I'm just not sure when you take them. I love the idea. That's the part I can't get past is the win of it.
I think you've just ruined the floater three for me in less than 2 minutes.
Just by asking that question?
Yeah.
You don't have an answer?
Well, because I think the reality is it probably was never a very practical shot to begin with. It's just extraordinary. You mentioned Larry Bird, okay? There's a game against the Bullets back when they were called the Bullets in Washington.
Wait, did Cody have an answer, though? I was curious.
This is the answer. I'm not transitioning.
Okay.
This is the answer.
Right. Okay.
Cody's gonna riff off this because I know Cody's seen this, and Kyle, you've probably seen it, and I'm guessing like 32% of the audience listening has seen it, which is 3 people if my math is on. So there's Larry Bird at the end of a game against the Bullets. He hits a 3. They call timeout. They had called timeout before, so the 3 didn't count. So he was really mad at his coach, Casey Jones, for calling the timeout. He said, "Give the play is the same play. Give me the ball. I'm going to hit the 3." They throw it back to him. He catches it, and he hits this like one-legged. He's on like one leg kind of moving and floating with the other knee up, and he just dips it in. I imagine it's a moment like that. I think that's where like the quote-unquote floater 3, you're kind of on the move. You can't really have time to like set your feet and square up. It might be easier to like keep your momentum moving toward the basket. I mean, theoretically, if you really get hardcore about this thing, you don't have to shoot it from 24 feet anymore because you just take off from behind the line and you're like at 23 or 22 feet.
Ooh.
So I think that's the idea in my head behind the excitement of the floater 3. But
there was a tournament game Kentucky had. A lot of my memories of basketball rooted in 90s Kentucky, like where Saul Smith shot a 3 where he jumped. I think it was against Miami in like 1999, where he jumped and his momentum took him like almost to the free throw line, and they had to go back and review it. And it turned out it was a 3. Maybe I'm just stuck on the fundamental, like I can't get it out of my head that like you pull up, you plant your feet, you transfer your energy up and you shoot a straight up jump shot. Maybe, if they're in drop, maybe it could become normalized by somebody, maybe LaMelo, that like you come around the corner there and if they're dropped, just shoot it with your momentum, like you get a soft shot. Of course, LaMelo doesn't really have a problem with getting soft touch, but Cody, what do you think?
Well, this is just about the worst kind of analysis because I don't remember the player, I don't remember the team, I don't even remember when in the playoffs it was, but it was during the WNBA playoffs this last year, and I kind of think it was the finals, and whoever it was, she had dropped like 5 threes already. And she took off like one-legged and it wasn't quite the floater. Like I think she had the guide hand to her left and fired it up. And I know LeBron James was retweeting it and freaking out about it and stuff like that. But I feel like it's almost like a moxie move. Like that's almost when you have to do it. Like it's kind of like when you throw down a windmill dunk. Like it's an assertion of dominance. Like, listen, I'm so hot right now that I don't even need to establish my footing. It's the Steph Curry turning away from the basket, right? There's no functional reason for it, but sometimes if you pull it out, like it just demoralizes the other team. And I think that's really the only appropriate time besides like there's only 1 second left and I need to give it to this guy because I know that he's going to be like, you know what, this is my moment to fire this off. So I just think it's the windmill dunk of 3-point shots. So if that's the case, I'm in support of that. Give me a little bit more flair out there.
All right, someone's got to rein this show in and get.
I think everything we just said is beautiful. I disagree with you about the phrasing "rein." I don't like it. That means it's like an unruly, unwieldy stallion that needs to be. I don't agree, Ben. But you do you. All right, go ahead.
I'm just saying. I just want to. How about steer us back? Can I steer us back?
I've been one of the biggest proponents of the floater three, I'll say. So I needed this conversation. So
Okay.
bring me back to reality.
How often do you see that? Like, I'm just confused why this came up. Like, how often does this ever happen? Was there any from the season that stand out to you so far? Is there like an indelible floater three?
I just feel like it's been in like the farthest left conversations of basketball where we're just like oh, we got to think about the most like post, it's over here with like the experimental bands, you're like the triangle is the main instrument in this band, it's like you can't do that. I feel like we have to have those crackpotty Willy Wonka's R&D. My hands are just in the air a lot. I don't know what that's about, but I think we have to have those to sort of move forward, right?
Let me follow this up then, because let's talk about a player that plays for a team that's near and dear to my heart, and that's Giannis Antetokounmpo, right? This is a guy who I think over the last like 3 seasons is shooting like 28% on wide open threes, and if I remember, it's something like the 8th percentile across that timeline. Like, it's not good. And this is a guy that also like can't quit them, right? He can't stop pulling up from 3. Like, do you honestly like? Let's go on this line of reasoning. Should he start seriously considering, like, in transition, taking off from the 3-point line, or just trying to get as close to the basket as possible? Because if there's anyone in the league that's going to be able to get, like, a 2-foot start, like, maybe he backs up and then gets, like, a screen and he comes in and takes off and tries to get as close as possible. I wouldn't be surprised if he made that floater at a higher percentage than he makes wide open threes. So I think that's maybe the evolution we need to see from people like Giannis.
Cody, I don't mean to be the one to be the bearer of bad news, but I don't know if Giannis can make a 10-foot floater at over 29%. I mean, I'm just looking at the numbers here. I mean, he is at 44% on all of his mid-range field goal percentage. Yeah, so
let me see if there are even any runners in Giannis's. Like, we can check this.
There are no runners. There are no runners.
No, hold on. We'll check last season. Any runners in his shot profile? It says 39 attempts. I'm not going to pull the footage up here, but it says he was 20% on those.
There you go.
Yeah. I mean, I like the idea of the Giannis putting it on the rim because he's most likely to go get it thing. I mean, that's interesting.
I'll tell you a postmodern thing that I like that Cody just got on. I like the idea of leaving your feet and then messing with the defense and waiting for them to commit. And so you see versions of this with like Trae Young, where he comes down the lane and he leaves his feet into the shot motion of the little floater. And then he's like, well, if you play the pass, I'm going to float. If you play the shot, I'm going to pass. And then if you're sunk in and helped and you've got everything buttoned up, I'm going to wait for the weak side defender to commit so I can skip it to the corner. That I like. I want to see more jumping and manipulating in the air, which is something that we were growing up. They told you never do that, never leave your feet like that. But I actually think the real artists and the players who can actively break down the defense and kind of dictate where they want the chess pieces to go, I think that's a weapon that a lot of them can use.
There was I think it's called NBA Inside Drive 2002, which to me also, if anyone knows.
My God, thank you for bringing that up. I'm just glad someone brought that up, period.
So, okay,
thank you, Cody.
If you know this game, this might have the best intro to any basketball game, like in history. Like, I think it's Sir Mix-a-Lot song called Game, and it is Apex intro to a video game. It's just the best. But anyway, the point of bringing this up is, Ben, when I was playing this with my buddies back in the day, the jump pass was so instantaneous because, like, you could just hang in the air and wait till you, like, just before you landed, and if you shot, it, like, wouldn't affect your shoot. It wouldn't affect your shot at all. So, like, we had to ban the jump pass in it because it just made it too unfair of an advantage. Now, in real life, like the Trae Young situation, Ben, I think it's kind of hurt him a little bit. I feel like there's been a lot more times this year, at least, where his finishing at the rim has just been putrid because he gets himself caught into that, and then he doesn't really know what he's going to do, and I think teams are starting to pick up on that trick. So I think it's something that players should play around with a little bit more, but I do think that somebody that's smaller, not like explosive vertically like Trae Young is, I don't necessarily know if he's going to be the best user of that kind of skill.
Do you know
Halliburton's a master of it too? I was going to say Halliburton's incredible at that pass.
Yeah, Halliburton's another guy who's, I think, using that. You know how we got started on all this? We got started on the floater three because Victor Wembanyama had a floater three. Oh. And I asked Kyle about Chet Holmgren. That's where we started.
I'm more than willing to circle back. The jump pass was also awesome in NBA Live 2000, but I'm more than willing to circle back to Chet Holmgren. Go ahead.
About 30 minutes ago, when we set out to talk about Chet Holmgren, and you've got these rookie rankings on the Ringer. They're really lovely. I love the art, beautiful, just images and visuals of the players and these little descriptions, and it's a great service because it kind of keeps us on the pulse of these exciting young guys as they come through. But also we might have this like awesome rivalry brewing between these two crazy big men in Wemby and in Chet. And we're just gonna get crazy, Kyle, because we need the clicks. That's how it works. You have Victor ranked first, and Chet ranked second. Do you feel that Victor has been better? Is that what you're saying? Has he been better this season? Has he been a more impactful player than Chet Holmgren?
I'm weighing a lot of things. I'm trying to do something with these rankings that might not be possible, honestly, at the end of the day, but we're going to try. We're going to do our damnedest. I'm trying to weigh what I put these players into tiers, projections based on my evaluations in the past, based on what they're doing, and I'm kind of holding them to there are different levels of grace is what I've been saying. There's different that, you guys know this, that not every job is the same in the NBA. If your job is pretty purely catch and shoot and you don't really are never really allowed to like put the ball on the floor or make any kind of like manipulative decision, that's a different role than someone who's 19 who's being thrown into, 43% of their touches or pick and rolls. Or even on the defensive end, we could switch it to, if you're a helper and you're not chasing a ton, you're switching off the ball a lot. That's a different role than being a defensive anchor at 19 in the NBA. So I'm trying to weigh those things differently. There are some things that I think are sort of like, the systematic with the Spurs or systemic, whichever one. I always miss those up. Where, his usage rate, I'm pretty sure, is at the top. I haven't checked it today, but his usage rate has been at the top for rookies. A lot of his touches, there's some things that are a function of that. Like, I don't think that he's always getting the same types of easy buckets that Chet is getting. I think his role is different than Chet. Chet's been phenomenal. I've wondered if he was in the same situation, if you switch spots, if you had them switch spots, how many more efficient, easy ones would Wemby get as opposed to Chet? Things like that. I do think, if you wanted to poke a hole in Wemby, I was going to ask you this. Actually, I thought of this last night before I fell asleep. I was like, I'm going to ask them this. If you wanted to poke a hole in Wemby, how would you guys do it? I'll start with that. If you wanted to say, like, I'm worried about this, or if there was any kind of, like, cynical kind of a take to be had, what would you guys say it would be? I mean, that's basically my sort of that's my short answer for why I and Chet is gaining on Wemby, I would say. I don't think that that's a controversial thing to say at all, but what do you all think about that with Wemby?
Cody, did you notice how there was no answer in that
There
speech?
was an answer in that.
Question. There was a question.
Quite political.
No,
it was
I
very
ended
political.
it with
Yes.
no. I think that Wemby's being leaned on. His usage is way higher. I think he's being leaned on in a different way. That if Wemby played with Jalen Williams, Josh Giddey, I mean, if he had just Josh Giddey, I think his life would be more efficient. Now he's leaning too hard on the face-up stuff. Like he's rushing it. He's taking. I feel offended that you said I didn't answer. I felt like I did. No, I mean, he's leaning too hard on the things that he's inefficient at right now. He's just not consistent. He's probably – I don't know how his percentage would change if he was a little more discerning about the types of dribble pull-ups that he takes or catch-and-shoot stuff. He seems a little too eager to do that to me sometimes. I feel like he's way, way more effective when he's in the mid-post as a passer, as a scorer, getting to the foul line. So that's kind of where I am right now, but it's close. It's closer than I think people even realize, honestly, for my list anyway.
Yeah. I think if I were to poke a hole, I'd start with the shooting. How about that? Because to me, the reason I was wrangling you a little about the non-answer there is I think there's a pretty good argument that Chet has just been better. And it has to do with offense, right? They're both great defenders Wemby, I think especially if you go back to your concept of using past information, it's early in the season. That's how you're trying to stack this up. You're trying to give these players the grace of all the scouting that you've done, and especially these guys, especially Wemby last year. I know you also watched a ton of Mets 92. It's like Wemby's defensive ceiling and his defensive presence is extraordinary. I personally think it's beyond Chet's, both now and looking forward to the future. But the offense has always been the rustier or sort of the like more developmental part with him. Whereas Chet, man, not only does his offense look more complete, but the shooting, like the difference between them as shooters right now, I think you could argue is a canyon. It's like a giant chasm. We don't have huge samples, but Wemby's 34% from the mid-range, and he's 33% on his wide-open threes. If you look at the same numbers for Chet, he's 52% from the mid-range, 43% on wide-open threes, 52% on catch and shoot, 91% from the free throw line. I mean, like, his touch with the ball around the basket, the way he kind of... I was really impressed with just the motion, the shooting motion, how comfortably he looks everywhere, snapping the wrist. It's a very soft shot all over the court. So that's where I would start, is the offensive side and what to make of that. And of course, playing with a point guard helps, to your point. There's like Wemby is still playing with Wemby is in a system that kind of is like a car without tires. Like there are wheels, but there's no tires because he doesn't have a point guard.
I found myself kind of reaching that point where last night I was like, man, this is just not that fun to watch, because I've been juggling, like, really want to watch most of his games. You know what's interesting too here is that like their usage is just so, like, Wemby's handling the ball in ball screens way more than him, but like Chet also is more than double Wemby in times as a screener and a roller. Like Chet is at 21.4. Wemby is at 8. So if you just think about like the easy stuff is just not present in Wemby's life right now, like at all. And he's not efficient enough to overcome that in like the way Durant was, let's say, because he plays that style. He's just bigger, but he's not the same level of shot maker. So I think what we're seeing is just like, we could have a conversation about like what needs to come along in the time, but you're absolutely, I mean, the chasm between them as shooters is absolutely real. Yeah.
I'm thinking about, there's a specific play where we're talking about just the context of the Spurs where Devin Vassell's bringing the ball up, right? And I think I was texting you about this recently, Ben, but it's a 3-on-2 fast break, right? So the Spurs have 3 guys and there's 2 other opponents coming up. I don't remember who they were playing. And Wemby has like a full step on the guy he's in front of, right? And Vassell's coming up in the right slot here. And he has like 4 different options, okay? He could kick it to the corner where the defender is waiting for the pass to go and close out. He could pull up from 3, where there's no way the defender's going to recover to him. He could keep driving to the basket and probably get there pretty easily because this player's kind of playing the gap here. Or he could throw the lob to Wemby. And out of those options, he picks the absolute worst in tossing it to the corner. And it's just like, when you watch it, I'm like, you don't even need to slow this down to see that the level of decision-making for a lot of these guys on the team is just, I don't know, Trey Jones, I think his on-off right now is like plus 21 because he's the only functional point guard that's like getting minutes for the Spurs. I think he might actually have a positive on rating too. Like, I just don't understand why Trey Jones isn't starting as the point guard at this point. Trey Jones lover here. Any Jones lover. Let's get both Joneses over there and that'll fix everything on the Spurs. But I think it is clear to me that Wembanyama just is not the shooter that Chet has. But, as Kyle was saying, there's just the level of passing that's surrounding him and the level of guys that has feel surrounding them is so much worse that I don't know how that impacts every other aspect of the game. So I think that's still really difficult for me to figure out objectively which one of them is probably the better player in some of these spots.
I think Wemby is being sandwiched. It's a 3-way sandwich. He's being squished between what you're talking about. I kind of talked about this on Bill's show a little bit, where you've got Keldon, who leans scoring and is trying to learn to become more of a decision maker. And he's still early in that process. He's improved, but he's still early. And you have Vassell, which, Cody, what you described is like, you see that multiple times a game. And then you see Sohan, who has a different issue, who is he does have like a bend in his game where he likes to facilitate, very willing to get off of the ball, but he doesn't have the same kind of dribble pull-up respect that Keldon or Vassell do. So it's a different type of a problem. So you got him Sohan is trying to leverage something to help the bend in his game, which you see this sometimes. It's like I always think of the ultimate example of this is like Ricky Rubio. If Ricky Rubio was like a self-creator scorer, like more of one, he could have been one of the best point guards of all time. But it's like it's sad to see that whenever you see somebody with that instinct, but they don't have something to leverage. And so I think that Wemby is just kind of getting squished between that a little bit. I don't think he's off the hook for the fact that he's not making the shots. And he's got that thing where it's like aesthetically, it seems like he's leaning forward a lot whenever he's shooting the ball. Have y'all noticed that with his jumper? Like, I don't know if that's something they've talked about. I feel like he's like leaning over the line, like sometimes like he's doing like a squat with like poor technique. But anyway, yeah, that's kind of, I agree with you. I just think that although that convergence of things is definitely not helping.
Still haven't had an answer, but it's okay. We'll move on.
What more do you want? What would be an answer? I thought that what the hell?
It was great. It was great.
Ben Taylor.
It was fantastic.
Tell me on Twitter if that was an answer, because I think that was. I did not politician that. Come on, pal.
So okay, so you're still saying Wemby is your 1, Chet's 2, but Chet's closing. They're very close.
Yeah, I think I literally said that. I think it's close. Yeah,
okay.
I mean, Chet has been – I always love it when I'm in a position to defend someone I'm super high on. Like, I had Miami fans messaging me and be like, Jaime Jaquez, what the hell, man? And I'm like, I would love some AI to go and pull from the last two years. I was on this, like, more than a year ago talking about, like, how much I love him. And I'm just like, Chet – for God's sake, I compared Chet to like a cross between Pau Gasol and Anthony Davis. I don't know how to praise him any more than that, but, you know, it is close between those two, very close.
Kyle, that leads me to my next question. Why is Jaime Jaquez so low in these rankings? He's 9th, and he's just a few players. We might talk about these other guys because they're fun. Jordan Hawkins is 8th. Keontae George is 7th. Brandon Miller is 6th. That's about that's about the end of the players who could complain about here with Jaime Jaquez. But like, how many years has Jaime Jaquez been in the league? That's the first question I need to ask you. It's not a rookie, right? How many years has he been in the league?
If you looked at him, I said he's got an old soul, but he's always, if you've watched UCLA at all in the past few years, you know that he's always been like that. I bet he played like that in high school. You know, you remember that thing where I think it was Baron Davis was talking about Paul Pierce, the way he would play. He was like he literally has been an old man his whole life. That's how he plays. No, I mean, Jaquez is an example of, he's like 23 and he's got a more defined role. He's excelling in that role. And yeah, I mean, are you wanting to kind of unload on like just him as a player or what I like about him or what?
It's just he just plays like he's 30 and he's been in the league it's very rare to see rookies play with tempo like that. Like, he has great pace control when he has the ball. And I need to see him more. I haven't seen a ton of heat compared to the other teams and compared to some of these other rookies that I've been deep diving and things like that. And I saw him a little bit at UCLA, so I feel like, okay, I'm familiar with the shtick, right? Like, I know the game, but you don't always know it's going to translate that well. And he's a big frame, right? What's he measured at? 6'8", something like that?
I think 6'7".
Okay, so he's a big frame. And then on both ends of the court, he just knows what's going on. He knows what's going on when he has the ball. He knows what's going on when he doesn't have the ball. He knows what's going on when they're defending, which of course is critical in Miami to play and to excel. So you can take it in any different direction. Cody, I don't know how much you've seen him because we haven't talked about the Heat much this season, but it's like I start tuning in the Heat more this week and I'm going, what the heck? There's like, are they better than last year? Because this is like another legitimate piece that Eric Spoelstra must go home at night and go into his little lab down in his basement and be like, I did it again. What can I do with Jaime? Duncan Robinson and Jaime Jaquez together. What kind of potion can I make?
The thing with him is like his feel is really high. Like whenever I watch him, like he's just in the right spot. Like he knows where he wants to be. He's kind of plays the connective tissue, not to throw out more jargon like we are earlier. Well, I don't even remember what the jargon you said earlier, but I think connective tissue is right there.
Processor, I think.
Yeah, he's a processing connective tissue. Exactly. But then there are other times where like he loads up to take a three and I'm watching him like, is this going to hit the rim this time? Like, is it going to make it there all the way? And I don't know. I think I'm looking right now. He's shooting 33% on wide open threes. And again, it's pretty early in the year. You're Ben.
He doesn't need those threes.
No, you both don't get to wave it away.
Those numbers are wrong.
He fires them, and it's like, wow, it's drafty in there right now because that ball is just going all over the place at times. So there are some aspects where I'm like, I would like you to have some of these other skills. But in terms of the feel, I don't know. I just think like, playing pickup, I'm like, I like playing with guys that know where they want to be. I don't necessarily need someone that's going to hit threes all the time. It's just somebody that knows when to cut, how to cut, who to pass to at this time, when to do X other types of skills. And he has those sorts of skills. And I think that's really cool to have as a rookie.
Can I ask you while we're here, are you guys higher on the Heat than you were a month ago? Are you buying the Heat situation? How good do you think they are? Duncan Robinson has got this like expanded playmaking dribble game thing that's been a multi-year development thing that's seemingly real and helping him. I just want to take the temperature. Well, we have three people here in the room.
Man, I have such complicated feelings about the Heat, just across like multiple years now. I
Sorry.
think at the beginning
I've opened
of
up
the
a can of worms.
Yeah, I'll simmer it down. I don't want to be too hot in this segment here, but I don't know, over the last couple of years, just like the net rating between Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo being on the court at the same time doesn't scream that this is like a superstar duo. Like the amount of success they've had in the playoffs, you would expect to see like much higher numbers. And again, this year, it's a lot smaller sample size. But when you look at them together, it's not yelling at me that this is like a solid team in the East. Like together, I don't know if they have a net rating that's like 4.5 when they're both on the court together. When Bam's on the court without Jimmy, they're a negative 12. They have a negative 12.5 net rating. And again, they're buoyed by this like no superstar lineup where they're both on the bench and they're like plus 5.2. And I feel like that continues throughout all of these seasons. So I don't know. It's Eric Spoelstra doing the Spoelstra magic where like these guys come off the bench and they're able to give them a really good team. But how real is it? I don't know. I never want to trust it, but it seems to work every year. And now I'm just falling into like, oh, you can't count out Eric Spoelstra. But like, I don't know, Ben. I'm starting to think you can't count out Eric Spoelstra.
Kyle?
I mean, it's downright Spursian. I mean, it is reaching that level. I mean, if you think about, I'd like to go back. I can't say this for sure, like with like details, but I mean, last year, I mean, they had so much upheaval and just sort of flux in terms of lineups, and you get to the end of the year, and they also have some guys who are just like purely their whole existence is like break glass in case of like they have guys like that on the roster, and then you had Hero and Duncan have been so up and down. So I mean, I guess you could kind of apply that to some of your stuff last year, but to your point about them being stars, I mean, I don't know that they're. Jimmy went on a freaking heater last year. I mean, like he's extremely mercurial in terms of like when he's going to choose to be dominant, when he's not. So it's almost like the numbers just like they're very hard to follow on that front. Taking this to Jaquez, though, I wanted to comment just on his shooting, though, specifically, because that is something I've watched closely. Like he was basically, I mean, he's been like a non-shooter, like to this point. Like, I mean, he kind of could fake it a little bit here and there, but like he wasn't a threat from deep. And I have noticed that his mechanics, I noted this in the ranking that I've noticed that his energy transfer has gotten smoother. He used to kind of have sort of a little bit of a hitch in his shot. It's not as noticeable there right now, and I don't know if it's a credit to Miami's shooting program, which has accolades, but he has looked better on that front, and he's somebody that it's not a lost cause. Like he's somebody that like I trust him to hit. And you mentioned about like how Eric Spoelstra scheming to how to use him. That's the beautiful thing about Jaquez is. You don't got to scheme anything for that guy, and he's going to do what he does because he just knows how to play, and he's just a murderer around the elbows, man. Like he made Drummond, which I'm not going to act like that's the biggest deal in the world, but he made Drummond look like a buffoon a few times, and Drummond's significantly bigger than him.
Cody's a big Drummond lover, so we have to be sensitive about our Drummond damage here.
I think we need at some point to set aside like an hour to talk about Andre Drummond and just how good he actually is.
I'm busy that day.
I think we need to have your perspective there then, because I feel like you both have to admit there's times where he whips out a couple of these plays on defense. You're like, good Lord, is this the defensive player of the year? And then there are other times you're like, where are you going right now, buddy? Like we're not even going to get into the defensive rate or the defensive rebounding numbers because those are just really strange. But I think there's something there with Drummond. I find him. I'm Drummond curious on this podcast. I'll say that.
Kyle,
We'll get you a sweatshirt that says Drummond curious. That's amazing.
Cody, who did I admit to being curious about? Was it Dylan Brooks?
Were you
Dylan Brooks curious? It was the jumper. It was Dylan Brooks' jumper. That's what it was from last episode.
Yes.
Kyle, you have Scoot Henderson ranked 10th. That was like a Tim Allen response on the pod. That was the most 90s sort of.
Had to get the trifecta in there. Sorry.
Scoot Henderson, ranked 10th. It's funny, you and I were working on some Scoot Henderson scouting at the same time last year, and we had a lot of conversations about him. And I feel like some of that is coming to fruition. The question, I guess I have a more long-range question for you, as Boogie is in the background. Boogie on YouTube, thank you for joining us. There he is. It's always nice when a dog...
He wants to go see my wife.
Yeah.
I'm going to let him go see my wife.
All right, well, then I'm going to have to pause this question and just throw it to Cody.
Well, first of all, I'm just confused because you said Boogie. I thought you were talking about DeMarcus Cousins.
Yeah,
I was looking at the screen. I'm like, wait, DeMarcus Cousins is just like hanging out in Kyle's room right now because I don't know the name of his dog.
No, that's his dog.
He wasn't going to...
DeMarcus Cousins is the namesake.
My dog's name is Boogie. He wasn't going to stop pestering me, so that had to happen. I had to make that. He would have stood there for... it's incredible, his discipline for pestering. It's amazing. He had to go. Anyway, yes. Scoot.
Yeah, no, he's just for the record. You named him after DeMarcus Cousins, right?
Oh yeah, one of my favorite players ever. I know people sometimes scoff at that, but I think DeMarcus was one of arguably the best low post scorer in the world for a time. So that's my opinion there.
Well, see, my confusion is he said Boogie, and I was literally expecting to see DeMarcus Cousins. Like he's just like sitting there hanging out with you.
I would have fainted.
Yeah,
that's fainted.
Yeah, so that's what we talked about when you were gone. Is I actually thought he was in your basement because he's a Kentucky guy, right? He came from Kentucky.
We have to do a couple more. We have to do a couple more because we have to get through some of these rookies so we can get to the Kentucky guard power rankings, which is what I think really everyone is dying for. The NBA content that's missing,
Cody, for God's sake, yes.
is the Kentucky guard power rankings. If we have time, we'll get to those. There's so many good Kentucky guards. I'm going to get to one in a second. But Scoot, I guess my question for you about Scoot is, from what you've seen so far, summer league, preseason, whenever he's played in the regular season, are you lower on the long-term prognosis? Is there stuff that has you worried? Are you selling a little Scoot stock based on what you've seen?
In general, I try not to sell stock on a teenage point guard who's on a weird roster construction. Like, I think you have to be like a pretty special floor raiser, to come in and do that immediately. To come in and immediately be like, I'm going to be like an offensive primary who like raises the floor. I mean, I don't even know how many rookies have come in and even done that historically. Ben, you could speak to that. I mean, like Luka and LeBron. I mean, but even LeBron didn't even totally, but he had a major shift in the way he did it. So I'm not ready to do that. There's been a lot of talk about people jumping off and ready to write him off. I'm not there. I don't think Jalen Suggs is somebody that comes to mind of somebody that came into the league and we immediately were like, okay, like there's some things that need to be recalibrated with our expectations. Like it was clear that he wasn't going to be able to like be that type of like an impact. He shifted. We were like, okay, you're something different. And playing with like a Paolo and playing with the Franz obviously helped shift that, and it was a comfortable kind of softer landing for him in that way. But Scoot. It was hard because I know like over the course of the past year, Ben and I know you and I talked about this, and over the course of us making our video, my shift in him happened when I made the video. It took me watching beyond the footage. Like I can explain what my like reservations were with him. when I started to work on the video, I came into it like I had been pretty pessimistic about him over the course of the year. Like I think that like on our Ringer NBA draft show, I'd kind of like not gone along with the consensus that like he was the obvious number 2 in the class. And yeah, so like I wasn't sure about like he was pretty wild with his decision making. I thought I didn't see a manipulative playmaker at all. I saw somebody that could make some basic like, I saw him making like empty corner reads where he could make the obvious pocket pass. He could make the obvious dump off. He's shown that he could get to the rim. I didn't see a middle game that I thought was translatable for the NBA, and that worried me. The more I watched him, though, I was like, I definitely think he could become a guy who manipulates in the paint with floaters, with non-jumpers, because he loved those elbow jumpers so much that I was like, okay, if you're going to live on those, you're going to need to shoot in the mid-40s as a 6'1" guy, 6'2" guy. They say he's 6'3". I don't believe that. But I stood next to him, and I'm 6'1". I just don't believe it. So he hasn't been taking those shots. I've said this in a few different, venues over the past like month, but he hasn't been taking those shots at all. So he's been getting to the rim and been indecisive. So he's been turning the ball over, but he has shown that he can get to the rim. I just think he needs to kind of recalibrate on that front. And the other thing is the dribble pull-up game from 3, which was bad in the G League. He's a decent catch and shoot player, but like creating it for himself, it's been abysmal. So what you end up having is this thing where, for him to be the best version of himself, he has to be a threat in some way, and he's just been unable to do that. He's been inefficient in basically every way. So, no, I'm not getting off. But I was my conclusion with my kind of eval of him was I didn't see a big-time score. I didn't see a guy who was going to, like, drive the offense of a team. I saw him as a supportive guy, a supportive offensive player. The defense is another conversation, but that's kind of where I am right now. I'm not ready. Give it some time is kind of where I am with Scoot right now.
Well, let me ask you a follow-up question on that, because he hasn't played that many games. He's only played like 5 games, and you even identified in this little in your write-up of him that like the defensive motor has been lacking so far. Like he's not giving as much energy there. But like with his size, his lack of shooting, and it sounds like you believe a little bit more in the catch and shoot aspect of his game. If he's not going to be like one of the best offensive players in the league, or even like top 20 offensive players with the ball in his hands, like what else is he going to be contributing on the court if he's next to other high-end talent? And to me, that's the question that holds me back from being more excited about Scoot, because I just don't see the vision of, like you mentioned that like his projection is maybe to be a starter, and I don't necessarily know how he fits into a high-level offense as a starter one day if he's not himself the driver of that offense.
We're tweaking the language. It was a launch where we're going to be tweaking some of the language, because I had people talk to me about the starter thing, and I was like, what I mean is top 100. I say that in the intro. So like, if you look at the top 100, it is a bloodbath. I mean, it is harder than it's ever been, and I would hope the sport is getting better. That's just kind of an obvious thing that would happen. But like, he, I think, could become a top 100 player. I don't think that that's a wild thing to say, but I think some things are going to have to swing positive. All of my worries, to be honest with you, are kind of like revealing themselves, but I'm kind of hanging in and trying to be faithful and gracious on the situation he's in. I think if he gets to the line, I think he's a capable enough passer. I think that he needs the time to grow as a manipulative one, though, and I think that if he can get the free throw generation, if he can get that middle game going, I think he's going to be a good enough sort of supportive piece. But if you're like really, really riding him as the thing that like drives your offense, I don't think that he's that type of player. And the defense is perplexing to me. It has been. You hear people talk about him and his effort. I thought his effort in the G League was frankly horrible. I thought his effort was not good at all. And my question to you guys, and I posed this in the video, is like, how often does that change in a player? I kind of feel like that's inherent to a player's personality. How often do they go from I kind of care about defense to I really care a lot about defense? And Donovan Mitchell is a guy that I like flagged as somebody who was a similar shooter and a similar decision maker who made a leap. I compared them age by age, like at Louisville. That's one kind of template that could work for him, but I don't know. I'd throw that to you guys. How you feel about that?
I think the idea of trying to like identify guards that take leaps defensively and become really, really good impact guards. Like if we looked at the best defensive guards of this period, names that come to mind: Alex Caruso, Drew Holiday, Marcus Smart. Were they ever not good defensively? That's the thing. And you talked about effort. I thought his effort in the G League games that I saw was more inconsistent. I don't think I would be as harsh as you quite were. But to me, it's not just about effort. It's about your tools as a defender, your awareness, the way you think about the court and map the court, and even the way you move athletically. I've had a lot of people ask me, like, why is a certain player amazing on offense? Maybe even Donovan Mitchell, his size aside. Like, why does he get beat off the dribble sometimes when he's such a great athlete, but on offense he can smoke people off the dribble? And it's a slightly different athletic skill set because you're being reactive, you're moving side to side. When you have the ball, you're using the ball to manipulate the defender, and you're moving 360 degrees, and you're dictating the action, and you're blending that in with a shot, right? You're using the shot. Defense is just like, I got to have my arm someplace, I can't foul, I got to be aware of a screen, I got to be aware of what's happening, and you need that effort. All of those things go into the same package. And so that's why I think it's hard to find examples, and maybe it's a worthwhile endeavor, and listeners will certainly tag us with some good examples if they're out there. But like being a guard at 18, 19, 20 and looking problematic defensively, and then getting to a place where it's like, actually he's a really good defensive guard. It might not be all defense, but like he's a really good defensive guard when he's 25. I think that's hard to do because of the things I just outlined. Like it's really, really hard to shift up in that skill set. And that's probably the space that's most worrisome for me with Scoot, because I think for Scoot to be like a really good NBA player, I think he needs to, I just don't think he can bleed terribly on defense. Yeah. This feels somber. Have I set the tone?
No, I was waiting for Cody. I thought Cody had something. No, I mean, I'm with you. It's kind of I think the thing that swung me was just listening to him talk, honestly, because I was like, because I had come to a point where, I'd come like if you were in the woods and, you come to like a space where there's like a creek to jump across. I needed something because I was coming to this big gap where I was like, for me to jump this gap that I have, and the gap is my doubt in this situation. I was like, I need something that's going to make me feel good about this. And, I do think that the rim pressure is going to be there. I think that he's physical. Like, I think that there's been a lot of debate about him as an athlete. He's not the same type of athlete as like a Westbrook or a Derrick Rose. He does that's like twitchy power. Like, I think Scoot's big superpower is he has awesome balance. Like, if you look at him in traffic, I compared him to like an action star running on like a high speed train. He just has inexplicable balance in some situations. Huge hands, long arms. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, this is what's amazing to me though. You see that on these possessions offensively, where it really shows. Even in the game they played against Mets 92, he has some moves against Wemby where the balance is absolutely incredible. The ball's really low to the ground. He's shifting in one direction at high speeds, and then he stays completely balanced and slides back in the other direction around him. And Wemby's a big time, like you're playing an 8-foot dude, and you're like, that is awesome. That is incredibly impressive. And then you'll go down and watch him on the defensive end, and he's like leaning over his toes, right? He gets like out over his skis and gets out of position that way. And it's just like, it's not symmetrical, even with like an athletic trait like that. So I don't know if you can hook into that defensively and upgrade, but keep going.
Well, I'm thinking about his finishing ability now because, Ben, we did the best finishers of all time episode, and, there's not a lot of smaller guys that, like, compete for that, and I think some of the, like, really good finishers, guys like, I guess Kyrie Irving's one. I don't know how much we talked about him. Steve Nash, Tony Parker. These are guys that, like, aren't very vertical in terms of their finishing. They just have this ability to use both hands, and they can wrong foot their opponent and stuff like that. But the thing about those guys, unlike what we're seeing from Scoot, is like the pull-up game. If he doesn't also supplement that with like the pull-up game, I don't know. I hate to add to the somber note, but I feel like coming away from this, like when I saw Scoot pop up at number 10 on the list, I was like, I'm not even sure if I would have been able to put him up this high. And, I don't want to be out on the guy. Like, I don't want to be the super negative one, but the avenues that I see, I just don't see a ton of avenues to him being a guy that I'm like going to really trust on a high-level squad.
I think that's fair. I mean, there's, like I said this the other day, that like there's definitely a net under him for sure of like, okay, it's a tough racket, as I was saying. It is a tough position for somebody with his challenges. I think you just kind of have to put your I don't know. You've heard me kind of. I'm not like one of these just like rabid zealot believers in him. Like I definitely have acknowledged the concerns. I've just kind of gotten to the point where I'm like, I think I'm leaning towards optimism still, and I'm giving him grace because of the injury and things like that. I think once he slows down a little bit and he starts picking his spots better, he stops surrendering these pull-up threes like the one I linked to, like where Dennis Schroeder just invites him to take a dribble pull-up three. I think once he starts to kind of figure that out and he's able to, here's the word again, leverage some of the things that he is good at, I think we'll start to see some of his more positive traits pop. But I think the defensive thing, like screen navigation is another one, Ben. You were talking about like his anticipating. Not that any rookie guard is really great at that. Scoot's pretty bad at it right now. I just think he's got to he's going to have to really, really work on that part of his game, I think.
There are a few rookie guards that are quite skilled.
Well, I say this class, that's
where
great
a
segue.
screen is coming from. And now we get to just take our freak flag out and just let it fly. Do we even need to talk about how great Asar Thompson is? Because I when you said that, of course, I thought of him, but there are other great defensive rookies. Anthony Black has been fantastic defensively, and we could start with him, but I want to land on Cason Wallace, who you have ranked 5th here, and he's just he's nasty defensively. Like he's built like a brick. The first time I saw him in Summer League, I don't think I'd seen him play at all. Sometimes you see these highlights come out. Cody and I don't have time to do the draft stuff that you do. So when the season comes about and it's not a top 2 or top 3 pick, you might pull up a video or someone sends you a clip. So Maybe I've seen a couple, but you sit there and you watch him in person. And I watched him for about 10 minutes. And I was like, is that like compact Kawhi Leonard? Is he like a little 6'3"? Like, what is going on there? Is he like a little micro claw? So you get guys like this. It's really impressive to me that they're able to do this as rookies. And we can talk more about the other stuff that Cason does if you want, but just defensively, Anthony Black, Cason Wallace, Asar Thompson, I mean, obviously the two bigs at the top of the cliff, just amazing defenders for first-year players. And it is very rare, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I said as soon as I said that, I was thinking, well, this class is really not a fair thing to do, because the track that they're on as a class defensively is utterly unbelievable. I watched your Asar video, by the way, and loved it. Yeah, I mean, a lot of do you want to talk about his athleticism before we go to Cason? Or there was one thing about Asar that I pinpointed in my watching him with the Pistons that popped even more than it ever has, and that is his hip mobility, but also his you see Steph doing this offensively. He's really worked to get to the point where he can interrupt movements, having crazy fluidity in his hips and in his lower body, but he's able to, the reason he's so lethal is he's able to interrupt any of that motion at any point and shoot the ball with a consistency and with a replicability with his shot. Asar has kind of the opposite thing on the defensive end, where he's able to interrupt whatever motion he is in, I've noticed, and really, really reach a high point of his own sort of his own threshold to reach things that other guys just can't. And he cares to do it. I think that's another thing that's really critical here. It's you might have that athleticism, but he cares about doing it. He's just made some incredible recovery plays early in this season.
Yeah, it's the balance thing again, and then one of his sort of S-tier athletic tools, I think, is putting his foot in the ground and exploding. The force that he puts in the ground just from a standstill, or when he's in a defensive stance and he's completely balanced and he goes, oh, I got to go over there and recover. In the video, for me, it was the play with, I think Josh Giddey. There's a back cut or something against Oklahoma City, and he blocks it. And it's just I'm in my defensive position. I'm toggling. I'm totally balanced. I need to explode over there horizontally and vertically if I need to. He does that on command.
That's what I'm saying. Sometimes it'll just be more a lateral thing. It's not even, he'll just be able to react. I feel like the dial for his and you don't, I guess it's sort of a load up question, right? I guess there's just, he doesn't have to do that because he's such a talented athlete.
It's the 500 calf raises a day or whatever. You know about this? Do you know about the Thompson twins workout program when they were kids?
No, I don't. You're hitting me with a new one here.
Yeah, they have talked about when they were kids, they put together some workout routine for themselves, and maybe their goal was to make the NBA. I don't remember what they say, but it was like 500 calf raises, 200 push-ups, 200 sit-ups. I can't remember the exact numbers, but it was just like all this body weight stuff that they got into when they were really young, like 10 or 12-year-olds or something. It's pretty wild.
Impressions to do something like that.
Yeah,
It's
okay.
amazing.
So
you open the door to gym corner here, and we got to jump into fitness corner for just a second, because this is something that's really interesting, because we've talked about a couple of these guys that are super flexible. There's a couple of those like famous Wemby videos where his like, he's barefoot and he's like stretching out and doing the splits, and you're like, what is actually happening? How does anyone do this? There's this interesting shift where even like, when I was in high school, I heard a lot from the coaches that's like, oh, play football. Scouts like it when basketball players are big and tough and things like that. It feels like there's this shift where it's like, you know what? Maybe you should do yoga instead. Like, quit the football team, go hit the 105-degree room and do some downward dogs, right? And so I'm just wondering, like, are these guys getting explicit, like, mobility training a lot more as they're coming up? Because there are a lot of these guys that are, like, moving their bodies in a lot more, I don't know, fluidly athletic ways than I'm used to seeing, especially from like the 90s where people were just like, they'd hit the weight room and they'd come in and bruise people around. Whereas now it's like, nope, you need to be limber. You need to be flexible and ready to use your athleticism that way. So is there like a shift that we're seeing at lower levels in pushing athletes to do this?
I think Eric Liedersdorf is the guy to ask about that. No, I mean, I was picking like Ben. We talked about like proprioception in terms of like, and I countrify that word in a really special way. Proprioception. I wonder if we're seeing more of an athletic sort of alignment with that, like that players that have that gift of that spatial sense, and having what you were talking about, Cody, like where I think there's more of a mindfulness, not in the cliche like in the yoga sense, but maybe where. I don't know if there's been a movement towards like games that have like more processing things that align with basketball that kids are doing when they're younger. I don't know if that's soccer, whatever that is, and less football. But we're seeing more of this like I mentioned this on Bill's show also. I'm always mindful of just not repeating myself, but who gives a shit, frankly. Where Wemby and Chet seem to have exceptional awareness of the challenges that they're going to have. Like, that Chet's dad famously just had myriad issues with his body. And, we come in with more knowledge of, I know I'm going to be like pseudoscience guy talking out of his ass a little bit here, but like, we just have more knowledge of, how to keep these guys flexible. And, like Chet was way ahead on that. Wemby is way ahead on that. How to protect this frame. Like Kareem, was like, if you think about somebody who had a mindfulness about that, that's another example that kind of lines up body type wise, but also maybe that is a thing, Cody. I don't know. I'd love to hear from people who are experts in that field that could speak to that more, but it definitely seems like it,
No, it wouldn't surprise me if there was some more stuff in college basketball programs, because it's too prevalent at this point where I'm like, this has to be a specific conscious effort that we're seeing going forth.
Well, it's more pervasive in sort of the general exercise world, and I think exercise science and research and understanding about these things has moved ahead leaps and bounds in the last like 20 to 30 years. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if there's a better understanding combined with a more conscientious effort to say, how do I protect myself? I mean, you look at someone like Zion Williamson, right? New Orleans goes, we have to rebuild your gait because this is just imbalanced. And as someone myself with many imbalances in the past, that not just mentally, I'm talking about my body, just on the imbalances, right? Like that leads to injury. Your body needs to be balanced. When it's imbalanced, it compensates, and you get all these asymmetrical problems.
And Zion went to our supposed best basketball trainer. I mean, like, we could quibble over that. Me as a Kentucky guy, you could have fun with that. But I'm just saying, like, Zion went to Duke, which is like in the American game, it took him getting to the Pelicans. I don't know what the Duke medical staff, like, if they saw the same things that clearly didn't see enough to make changes, obviously. So I just think it's interesting that he had to reach the NBA level, to have that happen, to even have that conversation. I wonder if it's a weird inefficiency in the way that we're doing things in the American game. Sorry to interrupt you.
Well, no, I mean, the inefficiency might be as simple as we only get you for 4 months. or something. So how are we going to get you and then James Wiseman you? Although I guess, Memphis didn't have anything to do with that. But you know what I'm saying? Like, you don't want a guy to come there and then have him play 3 or 5 games. You want him to take you to the tournament and win a championship. Maybe that's a good yeah, go ahead.
And how much leverage do you have to do that as a college basketball staff? You come in and we have you for, 4, 6, 8 months, whatever it is. How much leverage do we have to, well, you probably don't have the time, number one, to probably institute a real change. And then also, two, are we going to be able to do that? His people might just be like, no, we're not doing that.
Right.
Because every player has people, in the college,
You want to showcase his skills. I think that's a good place to finish on the Blue Bloods. Kentucky, Case and Wallace. Where does Case and Wallace land in your definitive Kentucky guard rankings? There are so many good Kentucky guards that have come in the league, starting with Devin Booker 8 or 9 years ago, whenever that draft was. Of course, for those who don't know,
8, yeah.
Kyle is Mr. Kentucky.
No, no one. I don't think I could be accused of that. Right?
You do, Kyle. We're at the end of the show. We can get a little bit more personal here. Do you watch football a lot? Do you watch like the NFL every Sunday and Kyle? What do you do every Saturday when Kentucky football is on?
I get fucking righteously pissed at Kentucky football. I don't know why I put myself through it. I publicly went through we were joking about who the ringer people are, the funniest ringer, actual pure fans, who are the funniest to observe when they're watching their team. And I was throwing out all these names. It's probably me, to be honest with you. Kentucky football, we're trying to climb. We're trying to move from one social strata to another, a different class. It's never going to happen. Alabama pushed the boot on our face. Georgia pushed it. Sorry to rant about that for a second, but no, the only football I watch is Kentucky football, and it's miserable. I don't know why I do it. God almighty.
Not Mr. Kentucky, though, Cody.
No, the cat's out of the bag. I mean, come on. What am I gonna say to you? I do think that if anything, I'm harder on Kentucky basketball players than the average person, to be honest with you. So I get that sometimes. To speak to Kaysen, I loved Kaysen well before he committed to UK, and I was elated when they got him because I saw some of the things. I think to speak to sort of his situation. He was on a poorly constructed team, similar to Derek Lively. Cal just has not done a good job. That's a different conversation. I have not agreed with his value set in terms of roster building recently. And I think Kaysen is a secondary guy. With the Thunder, he's not overburdened offensively at all. He's the jobs are within his means. And defensively, he had back problems a lot of last year. So we didn't get we saw it against Michigan State earlier in the year. He was a terror. But he had a lot of things working against him, and I think that caused him to slip, and he's a perfect fit with the Thunder.
Well, what I wanted to ask you about Kentucky specifically is there's something in the water? Is it a Cal system, or is it just a coincidence that they've recruited all these guards that are so good and so successful? He used to be big men. There was a run. I mean, your guy Boogie Cousins through Anthony Davis, and Bam, I think, is the only big man in this period. But let me just read it while you stew on this question. It's quite incredible to me. Devin Booker was drafted in 2015. Jamal Murray was drafted in 2016, the best Kentucky guard. Malik Monk was drafted in 2017. Darren Fox is 2017. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is 2018. Technically, you still get guys like Hamidou Diallo in 2018. Keldon Johnson, 2019. Tyler Hero, 2019. Emmanuel Quickley, 2020. Tyrese Maxey, 2020. Shaedon Sharpe, 2022. Case and Wallace, 2023. That is a ridiculous run of NBA guards coming out of Lexington.
Are you ready to give us a ranking, off the top?
What's your question?
I just can't. Can you rank? Can you give us a top 3 guards of those guys that we just said? Can you do that off the top of the dome?
Oh, well, I was going to say, usually what happens when people get to the end of a list like that, they're like, and one championship.
No, I just want to know what do you think has happened that has spawned this? I don't remember seeing anything like this from a single school.
I don't know that there's one single reason. I mean, they've just recruited well, really, really well. If anything, I think a lot of those guys had sort of inefficiencies in the way they were used, so they ended up sliding. That's been a conversation about, Cal's really hesitant to put any kind of dribble pull-up shooter in pick and roll. I've talked about this ad nauseum other places. I won't burden you with it here, but I mean, in terms of the guys, I don't have the list in front of me, but I got a lot of grief for ranking Jamal Murray ahead of De'Aaron Fox last year, and I was just at the end of those playoffs, I was like, how you like me now? I'd say it's between. The Booker Murray Shea thing, they all kind of obviously do different things. You seemed pretty confident that Murray's the best Kentucky guard. I love Jamal Murray, love him. That's why I didn't even hesitate to have him. I've had to kind of come back around on Fox because I've been too hard on him, honestly. Historically, he's really worked on some of the things I didn't like about his game.
I think I've been too hard on Booker. I think Booker might be the best of them. Yeah,
the foul drawing with Booker got on your nerves. Cody. I don't know if he said that to you. Ben would get downright cranky about Booker's foul drawing.
I don't like the lean in. Cody knows. I don't like it.
I think the thing with Booker that sticks in my craw is that off-season video when he was getting double teamed and he was cussing out the guys for double teaming. Ever since then, I'm like, come on, let's just relax a little bit out there. But man, I don't know. I know we were pretty harsh on Booker the last couple of years, but I think he personally is going on this run to try and prove us wrong from a couple of those years ago. So, I appreciate the fact that we were behind his inspiration in the NBA.
Yeah. If he comes back down to earth, then we can be a little bit more balanced. But if he plays like he did in the playoffs last year, it's going to get very interesting where, everything is a 55% shot and he doesn't miss. We got to let Kyle go. Cody, do you have any more questions for the one and only J. Kyle Mann while he's here, gracing us once every 3 years?
I have one more thing I have to say, Kyle. I'm not a big college basketball guy, but I have to admit that Kentucky is part of maybe my favorite college basketball moment of my life.
What is this?
And
what's happening?
Is this going to hurt me? Whatever.
This is going to hurt, yeah.
And in 2015, I was attending UW-Madison.
Fuck. This is over. This pod is over.
Storming a campus after the upset was one of the great moments of my undergraduate career. So thank you very much to Karl Anthony Towns. I don't even remember who else is on that team, but Kentucky has a special place in my heart as a college basketball team.
How long were you waiting to say that? You were waiting a long time.
15 minutes.
No, it's no secret. That's the worst. That's the worst loss of my lifetime. My dad told me Georgetown '84 was his, where he died inside, and that was mine. It was
what?
Right. What people something that people forget. What?
That was worse than 1992.
I was a kid.
It hurts more when you're a kid.
I was watching the NBA before I became a Kentucky fan. Actually,
they've made an entire documentary about how people hate Christian Laettner thanks to this childhood trauma.
I have more vivid memories of early Jordan than I do of Kentucky early on. Because I was very, very NBA on NBC zealot. I was every Saturday. Had to VHS record it. I've brought that up to my dad a lot. I'm like, Dad, remember when we would argue about that? That paid off. So I was late. I was later to Kentucky. The Pitino era definitely indoctrinated me and won me over. But no, to speak to the Wisconsin thing really quick before we go. It was horrible. But what something that people forget is that we basically traded traumatic losses. Because in 2014. Aaron Harrison hits that buzzer beater that I swear curved in the air and went in, and then you guys went and lost to Duke like a bunch of cowards. And then, I'm just saying.
That Duke loss was cowardly. That hurts. So I didn't realize Devin Booker was coming off the bench on that Kentucky team. I assumed it was Towns, and then there was the Harrison twins. Those Harrison twins didn't really pan out, did they? That wasn't.
No, they did not. Ulis probably could have played more, but Booker was also getting just switch hunted like nobody's business in that game. That's something that gets forgotten to history. And also the shot clock went off on that Nigel Hayes putback. So stick that up.
What is happening right now? Was Frank the Tank
shouldn't
involved
have counted.
In this game?
We were up. It would have been an 8-point lead. Go watch the tape. That ball was in his hand when the clock went off. And you guys are the bad guys, and we are the good guys.
Yep, that dunk explains the 7 points that differentiated at the end. So I'm with you on that one. The 7 points for sure.
Anyway,
to support this show, if you're still interested in something like that, check out patreon.com/thinkingbasketball. We've got stats there, and other stuff. Cody, how do I do the outro? I can't even remember how to do it anymore.
I think I actually don't even know. I think we sign up do you sign up on Patreon? Is that a thing? Like,
you go to patreon.com/thinkinbasketball, and then you click around and you can pick, if you want to get the deluxe, then you get everything.
yeah,
Kind of
you
works
need to
like that.
Tweet your order at Ben. Just like go
Don't
on to
tweet,
X
don't
and then
tweet
say
anything.
I would like an order of the deluxe from the Thinking Basketball Patreon, please.
You know what I would love? I was thinking about this recently. I would love people to just tweet great things at you. Like I like this is my lunch. This taco was delicious, and
positivity.
Yeah. Just like share awesome thoughts with you. Just hashtag people and share awesome thoughts. What if the internet were like that? What if social media was actually, dare I say, social?
Boring. Yeah, that'll never happen. Yeah.
Everyone, tweet what you're thankful for. How about we do something like that? Like we go out there.
That's sweet.
Yeah, let's do that. Except not even just on Thanksgiving. Just once in a while, be like, you know what? I'm thankful for this thing. Tweet that.
What are you guys?
Positivity in the world.
Or just get off social media. That's the other. That's probably the more effective choice to make there. That would be my advice.
What are you guys doing for Thanksgiving?
Going to my dad's house and going to my wife's parents' house. That's it. We got I think just 2 this year. So
little Kentucky football.
If I'm lucky, no. I mean, no. We got to play Louisville, and we're going to lose to them. So I don't know. I think football's probably my investment is tanking at this point.
And Cody, you're having some gravy. You're having wonderful gravy. Your favorite gravy. Tell everyone about that.
Well, actually, I just had, I have 2 Thanksgivings. I have my parents' Thanksgiving and then my wife's Thanksgiving. And when you go into the deep recesses of Wisconsin to visit my parents, we have a strict 4-meat rule at Thanksgiving, and none of those meats can ever be turkey. And so I was rolling in the venison, the shrimp. Ooh. I don't even remember what the other 2 were because I was just in a food coma from
shrimp.
Yeah, well,
shrimp counts as a meat.
How is it not a meat? Like if you take
That's
a vegetarian, you like have this bowl of shrimp, they're gonna say no.
Okay. Well, that's true. That's a very specific definition there. Yeah.
Yeah. It is meat. Yeah. What about you, Ben? What are your plans?
He's not leaving the house.
I'm not leaving the house. No, I'm not leaving the house. I'm getting takeout, but it's not delivered. I have to go pick it up. I have to go pick it up.
So you are leaving the house.
Get some...
No, I'm not going to have Mexican food on Thanksgiving. I'm going to have...
never a wrong time to have Mercado, in my opinion.
Well, that's true.
Sponsor me, please, Mercado.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. Mexican food is good 365 days a year. But no, I just, stay at home and have potatoes and stuffing and gravy and things of this nature. It'll be fun. And then I'm hopefully going to watch, maybe we'll watch some... Is there Thanksgiving basketball? I don't think there's Thanksgiving
there's
basketball.
college hoops. Yeah, Maui
Okay.
Invitational should be some good.
What is this? Is it French? The college hoops? I'm not familiar with this. Yes.
Right.
Thanks for listening to this one all the way to the end. And, of course, wherever you are, we hope you're having a great day.